Kelsey, you have been all over this story, and I'm so grateful that you're here to talk us through actually, at least a little bit of it. So we talked about what's happening in Florida. Can you just sort of paint the picture, though, of what else is happening across the states? Because I didn't realize just how many copycat bills there are out there right now.
Certainly. What we've really seen is that the bill that is known as the Don't Say Gay bill is just really the tip of the iceberg. As you mentioned, over 300 that have been proposed, but there's at least 7 of those that have been signed into law. And even since last week when I wrote the story, there have been 2 bills that have been really criticized, signed into law in Alabama. One of those has a really kind of extreme measure which requires school officials to report to parents if a child discloses that they're transgender. So we are seeing things that are copycat limited to schools, but we are also seeing things that are going in pretty far compared to what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, and Kelsey, right now we're looking at a map that I believe is also in your story. Can you just explain to us how back in 2015 we were talking about marriage equality, everybody was sort of championing the direction that we were going into. How did we get here?
Yeah, so what we first saw right after the Supreme Court decision that gave us marriage equality was pretty much a backlash that happens a lot of the time when there's a step forward. There often is a very strong pushback. And first we had bathroom bills that we saw where forcing people to use restrooms that are for their assigned gender, and then we've now switched to bills that are focused on protecting the children, essentially, is what the supporters say.
Protecting the children, that's what we're hearing from legislatures.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of the proponents of the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida say that this is really to make sure that parents control what their kids are learning in schools. But what critics say is that it's really going to be harming LGBTQ youth. And, we're already seeing some effects of that.
Talk to us about that specifically. What are some of the effects that we're seeing? Especially, I think that's important to talk about when we're talking about sort of the proponents and the people who are for this. What are we seeing as a result of this right now?
Right, so the interesting part is just because something is proposed and struck down doesn't mean it doesn't have an effect. Like just the very conversation has an impact on obviously the youth that are sitting there and watching that. We've seen in recent years that crisis calls and contacts to suicide prevention hotlines have jumped, and teachers also are nervous and are being instructed to kind of steer clear of topics that are so-called controversial in order to make sure that they don't run afoul of the law.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you have somewhere in here of your story about sort of what we're hearing. There's a stat right there from the Trevor Project about sort of what is happening. So as you mentioned, it seems like it's not even a concern whether or not this is getting passed or not. It's a concern that this is even being discussed.
Yes, exactly. In the Trevor Project actually released some information late last year that in Texas specifically, where there have been a lot of anti-LGBTQ measures proposed and passed, youth said that the very discussion was making them have harmful thoughts and harming their mental health.
What are we seeing in terms of pushback? I mean, is there any legislation that's sort of going through to counter what it is that we are seeing, or is the focus really on sort of the wave of proposals that we are seeing for anti-LGBTQ laws?
So there definitely are things that are moving in the opposite direction as well. We just saw that there was news that came out that now if you don't identify as male or female, you can get an X gender marker on your passport. There are things that are being done at the federal level. And certainly there are even blocks on some of the pushes that public officials are being made. In Texas, a directive from the governor to investigate families of trans youth that has been blocked. So there are things that are kind of moving in the opposite direction as well.
What about in some of these states, though, that we mentioned where, they're trying to do similar things to as Florida, like Alabama, Georgia, we mentioned, there's Arizona, there's Ohio. I mean, are any proposals sort of happening at the same time as we're seeing some of these other anti-LGBTQ laws going forward?
Yes, and the numbers certainly don't rise to the same volume, but there are, of course, pro-LGBTQ bills that are being proposed as well, where they're trying to protect people from discrimination and so on. And whether those eventually become law, we'll certainly be watching and looking to see.
Do you expect to see more anti-LGBTQ proposals, especially because this is an election year, this is a midterm year? Is the momentum just going to continue growing? Is that sort of where we're headed right now?
So my reporting definitely says that that's kind of where we're heading, and things are moving so quickly. Like even as I was reporting this story and writing it, I was updating it, up until the minute it basically came out because things were, happening on the state level all across the country. So I expect that we'll certainly, likely see something similar.
Well, and we have this stat up here too that I think is really interesting because this is specifically about Florida, but when we're talking about the midterms, I mean, does your reporting suggest that people are voting based on some of these issues? Is this important for voters? Is that why we're seeing sort of the influx? What do you think?
So the bet that a lot of these politicians are making is that they are kind of playing to a very conservative part of the voter base, and whether that pans out, we'll certainly see later this year during the midterms. But that's the bet that is being made.
What about on the federal level, though?
On the federal level, I think that the administration, as I mentioned, is doing certain things to kind of counter that. We even saw in the State of the Union, President Biden said to trans youth, we're with you and behind you. So there's certainly some actions that can be taken too, but as we know, there's so many things at the local and state level that really are what affect people's lives.